Recording in progress. All right, everybody. What's up? Welcome back to the Bird Rights podcast. We podcast about 4 times a year at best. Um, I might start doing some stuff that's more than 4 times
Oh
a year.
yeah.
It'd be very exciting. But draft season's always time we like to come back, and we wanted to do Zach
Little
and I
mock
were
draft.
feeling real draft season, you know, holiday season, draft season excited. So we were want to do a mock draft, just the two of us. And
Mm-hmm.
Zach, you want to walk them through what the exercise is here, what kind of mock draft this is?
So you're going to be getting some high level ball knowledge in this mock draft. This is expert analysis that you're going to be listening to for the next hour or so. We're gonna draft the first round only, the way we would if we were the GM of each team. So basically, it's just what we do. We're not going to do what we think is going to happen. I mean, this is what we'd hope would happen, but I doubt this is actually what's actually going to happen. So,
If every GM was the smartest GM in the league, this is what the
yep,
draft would look like.
yep.
Um,
If they really knew ball.
yeah, if they
Yeah.
really knew ball, this is what the draft would look like.
But
But
yeah, I'll be taking the even team or no, I'll be taking the odd teams.
yep.
And definitely be taking the even teams. And yeah, we're gonna draft how we
All
would
right.
as
Zach, kick us
expert
off.
ball knowers. Yeah. So with that being said, I have the number one overall pick. I'm the GM of the Tennessee Titans, and I don't really want to start Will Levis next year. That's doesn't really sound good. Um, as a GM, you're definitely looking to win, and the Titans do have some solid players on the roster. They've been building that offensive line for a little bit now as well, and it just hasn't been working on offense with Will Levis. So I think I'm going to take Cam Ward. He's my QB1, and he's not like he's in my top 10 prospects this year, but he's compared to like some of the last number one QBs to come off the board, he's definitely not in the higher tier of those guys. But I think he'll be pretty good. I comped him in my notes. I comped him to Big Ben. I think he's smaller than Big Ben, and I don't think he is going to be able to be as hard to take down in the pocket as Big Ben. But I do think he's got an arm like him, and I do think that he's just that level of passer. He also is pretty nonchalant, which he's got aura. So that's definitely a thing that they've been talking about a lot is how he kind of takes plays off at times and ends plays kind of jogging off the field, which in the NFL, I don't know if that's gonna fly as easily as it did in college. So I mean, we'll see, but I think the Titans are gonna take Cam Ward, and I think I would as well. Um, I just think that that's what the best outlook for them is in the future for their franchise to be successful is taking him.
Yeah. I think that's what they're going to do, and I think it's the right call given the situation they've put themselves in. I will say this is a draft I really would have liked to put myself in a position where I don't have to take a quarterback
Hmm.
because of the top two or three guys on this board are, I think, really special. But given where they're at, I think Cam Ward's a legit, top 10 type pick quarterback. Last year, he probably goes QB4 at best. I'm sure some people would have had some of the other guys ahead of him, but I wouldn't have. I would have had him at like kind of in his own tier between
Hmm.
the first three guys, like Caleb, May, and Jaden Daniels. I would have kind of had Cam Ward in between those three, separated from that talent group, but firmly ahead of
Yeah.
Penix, uh,
Hmm. I
Bo
completely agree
Nix,
with that. Yeah.
and JJ McCarthy tier.
Hmm.
But I think he's got a chance to be a great quarterback. I think he's a great competitor, which is weird. I think people confuse the nonchalant stuff for not being a competitor. He's from every account of people around him, he's a hard worker and stuff, but he just has to clean up. There are no, Western Kentuckies to play in the NFL. You don't get to
Yeah.
get
Hmm.
games off or plays off, and
Yeah.
I think he can fix that. But I think that's the right pick. All right, on to Cleveland now. I think this is a very simple pick.
Hmm.
There's two absolute blue chippers, three if you want to count the running back, which I would. Um,
Hmm.
but at premium positions, there's two absolute blue chippers. One of them maybe has a chance to play two ways in the NFL. Um, I don't know exactly if he will play two ways. I think there's definitely room for some gadget stuff where he plays a lot at corner and then a little bit of receiver. I think a lot of teams want to play Travis Hunter at receiver and then
Mhm.
maybe later on see if he can play DB as well. Um, I'm interested in being in that business and finding out what this can be because at worst you're getting an elite player at either of these positions, and at best you're getting a transformational type of player. I'm
Mhm.
taking Travis Hunter here. You're,
Yeah.
I think Cleveland probably would want to play him at receiver first, given the way
Hmm.
the rosters looks. But there's also, honestly, either way, corner or receiver, I like it. And if there's a chance he can do both, I'm in on it. Fairly simple. I'd think about Abdul Carter, putting him with Miles Garrett's enticing, but I think Travis Hunter's just too generational of a prospect to pass up.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I agree with this pick as well. I mean, this is a like once in a lifetime player. I mean, we really haven't seen a guy of this level of talent that plays two ways and is this level of talent in on both sides of the ball. I mean, we had guys like Jabril Peppers in the past and guys that did play two ways, like Charles Woodson and guys like that. But Travis Hunter is genuinely like a top five corner in college and a top five receiver in college, which is just absurd. And um, I mean, as an athlete too, he's almost one of one. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know how long the two-way thing could last for him. They might be able to pull it off for a few years, but the amount of I don't know, the amount of wear and tear that you put on your body by playing both sides of the ball and how many snaps he'd be playing in the NFL. I don't know how long he'd last, and I don't know how smart it would
Yeah.
be for a team to do that. But even then, I just think if he's stuck to one side of the ball, he's going to be one of the best in the league on that side of the ball, and I think that's a guarantee. Um, so it's definitely an interesting future that he has in the NFL, and it's definitely going to be really, honestly, fun for a team to kind of figure him out and find ways to get him the ball or just find ways to get him on the field. But yeah, I definitely agree with this pick, and I think he's going to be a home run pick
Yeah.
for the
I think
Browns.
there's two sides to, no pun intended, to how you could approach. I think the cleanest path to getting him on the field the most is a full-time corner and then an occasional gadget receiver that you have
Mhm.
packages for. I think that's the easiest way to do it. But there is also an argument that I think unquestionably his best skill are his ball skills. When the ball is in the
Absolutely.
air, he can find that thing and track it like almost nobody I've ever seen. Like Justin Jefferson is the other guy I've seen who's like unbelievable ball skills like I've never seen before. So there are some ways to argue like, hey, if that's his best skill, wouldn't we want to put that skill in our hands as opposed to the hands of the other team while he's on defense, right? Because if your best skill is your ball skills and you're only, you're not getting targeted all that often, wouldn't you rather him be playing receiver where you can take advantage of
Mhm.
that often? And that's where I kind of think he's going to end up playing receiver. Um, but I do think there's a world where I think if he's receiver, he probably ends up being mostly a full-time receiver. But if he ends
Mhm.
up playing corner, I think he'll get chances to play on the other side of the ball.
He like and it's a little like it's funny to bring up because um it's not at all the same to actual like full on 11 football. But if you watch his 7-on-7 highlights back in high school,
Unbelievable.
it's insane. Like the ball, if it's anywhere, like, and I mean anywhere in his like range that he can like contort
Physically
himself to
reach
get
to.
it, he snatches it.
Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah. So it's really crazy, and I think also him going to the Browns and the situation, like you said, the situation they're in, they have Denzel Ward. It's not like they're super needy at corner. Like obviously, to pair Denzel Ward and Travis Hunter up on
They
both
still
sides of the
got
ball,
Newsom,
corner is
right?
amazing, but they really are lacking at the receiver position. And I mean, Jerry Judy's great, but again, still could definitely say you need a 1A in that group, and that's definitely going to be Travis Hunter if he plays that one side of the ball.
All I know is Travis Hunter and Joe Flacco will feed families.
Hell yes, they will. Yes, they will. Joe
Uh,
Flacco is going to win the Super Bowl next year on
yep.
the Ravens.
No, he got signed by the Browns today.
I know. I know. I was making a joke. Yeah,
He's
yeah.
going to get cut and go to the Ravens. You're right. All right.
Yep.
All right. On to the Giants.
So number three, the Giants. So if this was a few weeks ago, I actually would have probably taken Shadur here, but they signed Russell Wilson, and I think that that's a good enough move for them to be able to take another blue chipper here, and pass until next year. And I don't know. I think Shadur is not the level of guy you want to reach for here when there's another blue chip guy available. And you also have Russell Wilson on the roster now. I think it's not necessary to make that reach. And to be able to get a guy like Abdul Carter, which is the guy that I'm going to take here, I think that's something you can't really pass up. Um, I mean, they have Brian Burns. I'm correct on that, right? They have Brian
Mhm.
Burns on the team. So packaging him up with Abdul Carter on the edges is going to make for a serious problem for opposing offenses to have to deal with. Um, I have him comped to Micah Parsons without the college allegations. Um, we don't have to talk about those, but the Micah Parsons comp, it's kind of like a roll your eyes kind of lazy comp, but I do think it's kind of true. I mean, they're both Penn State guys. They're both the number 11, which again, like a little lazy, but just he is such an explosive athlete on the edge. I mean, he's got great flexibility. He can get really around the tackles, he can get under the tackles, and he's really explosive as well. So he's just a really great athlete with really great pass rushing skills. And I mean, seriously, if you were to outside of like a Myles Garrett, who's like a one of one level athlete or one of one level prospect at edge, he is really everything you're looking for in an edge. So I think that that's a can't miss prospect for the Giants to take, and I think that that's where they're going to go.
Yeah, I kind of think this is how the top three will go. And you said Micah Parsons. That's a good comp. I think the other names that come to mind are Von Miller, who's a similar
Yep.
player of this kind of like hyper flexible, not huge, right? Not Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, giant,
Mhm.
overpowering strength. He is very strong. Don't get it twisted.
Mhm.
But it's not like this giant guy, but he's big, but not like, Garrett's unbelievably huge. Um,
Yeah.
but like Khalil Mack, another type like that, I think he's very much in that vein of pass rusher. And I think him and Burns on the edge with Dexter Lawrence on the interior, I think
So
there's a
good.
genuine argument next year that's the best D line in football.
Uh-huh.
And then you'd have Thibodeau coming off rotationally. If you want to keep him, you could also shop him. I'm sure you could get a day two pick
Mhm.
for Kayvon Thibodeau, um, which might be worth doing. If not, I have no problem keeping Thibodeau around. As you can never have enough pass rushers. Those guys get tired quick. It's good to have guys to come
Mhm.
in fresh. So I love Abdul Carter. Leaves the Patriots in a spot where I'm sure they're very upset because I'm sure they would have loved one of these teams to go quarterback and get in on the action on one of these blue chippers. I think there's
Mhm.
one blue chipper left in Ashton Genty, but I don't think the Patriots' offensive line or
Mm-mm.
roster is in a position to support drafting a running back this high. I think Mason Graham is a really interesting idea there. I really like him, but I actually think Milton Williams is gonna end up being a really great signing for them.
He's a stud.
Great,
He's a
great
stud.
signing is a little. He got paid maybe even more than he'll deserve, but they had the cap space.
Mhm.
I think they're desperate for O-line help. I think there's only one true can't miss O lineman in this draft class. I think they go Will Campbell.
Mhm.
And I think they should go Will Campbell. I think they hope he can play tackle. I think they're going to try him at tackle. If the arm length ends up being a problem, I'm fully confident he'll be able to slide to guard and be one of the best guards in football fairly quickly.
Mhm.
Um, and that's a win there at 4. But I think he's a skilled enough guy that there's a chance he can stick at tackle. So I think it's worth taking a shot on Will Campbell there at 4. And I think that's what they should do if this is how the draft falls.
Yeah, and I think look, the concerns about his hands and his reach are like those are real things that you should be concerned about. But look, he can absolutely play guard, and he would be an elite. I just think like no matter where he does end up playing on the field, he's going to be a great offensive lineman. So yeah, I think either way, whatever way his career turns out, it's going to be a good player that you're going to be getting. He played really well against great competition in college. I mean, he played in the SEC as a left tackle for LSU, who always has one of the tougher schedules every single year. So he was going up against a lot of the best guys, and some of the guys we're going to be drafting here in this first round, he was going up against. And yeah, he's just produced in college, and if it might not work out at tackle in the NFL, I think he's still going to be a great guard. So I
Yeah.
think it's a great pick.
I think the comp is Joe Tooney, right? Where it's a guy who is an elite guard when he plays there, but we saw Tooney slide out to tackle and he held his own because he's so technically sound and so good. But
Mhm.
Tooney did have with the bigger edge rushers, the longer arms, stronger, faster guys.
He's getting beat.
Um,
Yeah.
he's getting beat sometimes. He still played like an above average tackle, but would you rather have somebody be an above average tackle or one of the best guards in football? That's a fair and serious question. Um,
Hmm.
but either way, you'll have that option to play him wherever you think is best. All right, on to Jacksonville.
Yeah, definitely. So number five, I am on the clock here with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And with Campbell going off the board, and I do think that Jacksonville could use some offensive line help. But with Campbell going off the board and Graham still being there, I think I'd take Mason Graham, if I were Jacksonville. I really don't know too much about their interior defensive line this year, but I know that I know for a fact that Mason Graham is I don't know if he's another he's close to that blue chip level as far as a D-line prospect. I mean, he was a stud in college for Michigan. Again, played just like with Will Campbell. He was playing in the Big Ten against great comp. He was going up against some of the best in the game in college, and he was dominating. He definitely is a little bit on the smaller side for some of the defensive tackles. He's more like a Justin Madubuike, which isn't a bad thing because Beaks is still amazing in the NFL, obviously. I mean, he was an all pro. Oh, I'm getting a call. Sorry.
No worries.
Um, sorry. We can cut that out.
Oh, it's all good.
Um, no, yeah. Like I was saying, he is great with his hands. He's a really strong defensive tackle. And with him being on the smaller side, it actually does make it better for him with how big and strong he is. He's able to easily get the point of attack to the point of attack with the line. He's able to easily get under the guys that he's going up against on the offensive line, and get the better point of position to get around them. So I think he's a really can't miss prospect at defensive tackle. And I'm gonna look right now, but they're starting Eric Armstead, who's fine, a little bit on the older side, and Devon Hamilton, who I have never heard of that guy. So I think that he could be a big plus and a big add for them in the run game and the pass game. And then to add that with Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines Allen, I think that that would again make for a really good defensive line, just like the Giants are getting with Abdul Carter. I think it would be a big thing for their defense.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen a single more common mocked spot than Mason Graham to Jacksonville. I think almost every mock I've seen has him going there at 5 to Jacksonville. And it's because it makes so much sense, right? It's like a couple years ago, well, not a couple, I guess it's 4 or 5 years ago now. But when Cincinnati was drafting 6 and Jamar Chase was going to be there, every single mock was like, oh, they're going to pair Burrow and Chase. And they're like, okay, well,
Mhm.
can we get some more creativity in here? The answer is no, because this is what's going to happen. So
Mhm.
I think it makes sense. And I think I'd be assuming Browns and Giants don't go quarterback. I think this is a pretty chalky top 5, but I kind of, obviously there's things can happen, people can move up, move down, but I think if everyone stays put, this is easily the most likely outcome for the top 5. All right. Moving
Yeah,
on to the Raiders at 6. This is a really, really interesting one for me.
it is. It is. This is where
I,
I think it's those top five guys, and then
yeah,
it gets interesting here.
I, so there's a couple ways I'm thinking here. I, obviously the Raiders need help in quite a few places. Um, their O-line could use help, but there's not really, I don't love the options here this high. Um, they don't have a lot at receiver. DB and interior D line are also places they could look. I'm sure they'd love if Mason Graham would have fallen there. Um, so what I struggle with here is I think Ashton Genty is easily the best player on the board.
Hmm.
I don't know 100% certain if I think their offensive line is in a place to support putting in that running back, that elite running back right now. But I don't think
Hmm.
it's horrible. I think they made some moves in free agency. They got rid of, I forget the guy's name, but somebody was like one of the worst offensive line interior guys in football. Um, and I think that is the way I'm gonna go. I think he's the third blue chip prospect in this draft class. I think he's not a generational running back or anything, right? Saquon was generational, but I think he's every bit the prospect that Bijan Robinson was. And Bijan's been unbelievable. And I think you can expect a similar type of player, maybe not skill set wise closer to Kamara, but productivity early. Um, with you have your quarterback now in Gino, you have your coach, you have a primary weapon in Brock Bowers. I like some of the receivers at the top of the second round. You could look into getting even going into the third round. I think Pete Carroll's in the business of getting great players, and Ashton Genty is unquestionably a great player, one of the three
Hmm.
best in this class, and I think that's the way they go.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, for me personally, I do think Genty might be one of those. I mean, I think Saquon's a better prospect than him, but I do think Genty is on that generational level. Just as, I mean, watching some of his tape and just being able to watch some of his games last year, um, for Boise State, he like some of the runs that he was ripping off multiple times a game are like some of the best runs you'll see like a college player have in their entire career. And he was doing like two or three of these in like multiple games. I mean, it is impossible, or at least last year, it was almost impossible for these teams to get this guy on the ground. He was breaking like 6, 7 tackles sometimes on a full 70-yard touchdown run and scoring. And I don't think he's going to do that in the NFL as much, obviously, but I do think that just as far as like a contact balance level and a just a breaking tackle level, he's possibly the best we've ever seen come out of college, or at least in recent memory. Um, but I do think that there's genuine concerns with the durability stuff, as with any high level college running back that gets a ton of touches. So I think teams definitely will be a little worried about how long he's going to be able to play for and if they want to spend a high pick on that. But I do think that he is going to be a guaranteed great player for at least 5, 6, 7 years. Obviously excluding injuries or anything, but yeah, I think Kamara is a good comp. I think he's like if Kamara took steroids. That's what I think.
I said I like to think he's like if Kamara had people don't remember how good J.K. Dobbins' contact balance was when he
Oh
before
yeah.
injuries, but he's like Kamara with that kind of explosiveness and balance.
Mhm.
And to me, I'll put it this way: you said on the generational thing, I'll put it this way for how I see it. If we can say Saquon Barkley is the Victor Wembanyama of running back prospects, to
I
me,
yeah.
Genty is somewhere between Zion and Cooper Flag.
Yeah,
It's
I can
like
agree with that. Yeah.
it's a clear cut, oh, this is a dude, but not like Saquon coming out, you're like, holy, oh my.
Like, yeah, Saquon, it's like, I don't really know if we're gonna see a guy this talented with this type of frame and this type of
Yeah.
film ever come out.
Yeah,
And to play against such great teams in the Big Ten, yeah.
I talked about like with the with the Patriots, I talked about if they were ready, if the infrastructure was ready for a running back like that. The 2018 Giants were not. And despite that, Saquon took them from like one of the worst running teams in the league to a top 10 rushing team just on his explosive runs alone. He looked like
Yeah.
one of the best running backs in the league on the worst offensive line in the league for years. And then the second you put him in a competent situation, it's like, oh, this is like prime Adrian Peterson, prime Barry Sanders level production.
Yeah.
And so I don't think he's that, but I think he's as as
Yeah.
as
A
blue
tier
chip as
below
it
that, I
gets.
think.
Yeah.
But yeah. One more thing on the Raiders. You are correct about their offensive line. I'm looking right now, and their starting right tackle's name is DJ Glaze. So it's really not looking good for for Las Vegas. Sorry there. But DJ Glaze starting at right tackle. Yeah, I'm definitely praying for Genty. I think he's still going to be amazing, but that's definitely a tough
One
situation
more
to
thing
go.
on what you said, I'm not sure about the longevity and stuff. I can tell you who's not worried about the longevity. 76-year-old Pete Carroll. So
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and Geno Smith on the older side as well. They're kind of trying to make a move now, it looks like, to actually start winning games. And I think they're ready, not from an offensive line perspective, but just from a mental perspective in the organization. So, yeah, I think this pick makes a lot of sense.
mhm. All right.
Moving on to number seven, the New York Jets. Um, I think with the way that the board has fallen to me here, I think I'm gonna take Membao from or from Missouri, the tackle. He played right tackle in college for Missouri, and he is an athletic specimen at the offensive tackle position. I think he can move over to left tackle, which is probably what they're going to do um, with New York. But I think that to get a lineman this good and this freaky of an athlete, um, I think it's definitely a pick to take here. And like we've had the generational guys, like the can't miss prospects kind of come off the board now. I think the Jets really need offensive line help. They just got Justin Fields, who looked promising in those two games for Pittsburgh. So, they want to protect him. And to have a guy who is going to be able to move around the field and block for Justin Fields in runs and just down the field. He's going to be able to keep up with some of these linebackers. I think it makes sense from where they're trying to go offensively. And I think he's a really great player. And he played against some great teams at Missouri as well. But yeah, athletic. And I think that he can play both sides, right or left tackle for them. So that's going to be up for them to decide. But I think he's a pretty good player, and I think he's going to be pretty good in the NFL.
I think they like Fashanu at left. I actually
Hmm.
think the offensive line is in good shape with a massive glaring hole at right tackle.
Yeah.
And I think like not like a, oh, we can find like it is, they don't have a right tackle. They don't have anybody to play there that's ever played there before. So I think Armand Membu is or Membao. I've heard a bunch of people pronounce it either way, so I'm actually not sure how to pronounce it. But um I think he's the only like not the I think Josh Simmons is another one. But of all these first round tackles, he's the only one I'm like 100% confident projects as a tackle. A lot of
Hmm.
these other guys have shorter arms and you might have to slide in. Not the case with Membu. He's a more raw prospect, so maybe it doesn't ever fully come together, but I have confidence that it will, and I like him at right tackle for the Jets a lot. All right. On to Carolina, who needs a lot as well, but they had some encouraging stuff at the end of season with Bryce. Um, I think receiver is a way they could go. I think edge is a way they
Hmm.
could go. I don't think they go DB, even though they need help there. And if they do, maybe if there were better safeties in this class, I'd consider that. Um, but this is a mock draft doing what we would do, not
Hmm.
what will happen. Most people would consider this a reach. I love this guy. I'm taking him way too high. Um, oh, but I might want to do that instead. I'll just be upfront. I'll tell you what I was thinking. I was thinking about going Luther Burden here at 8.
Ooh.
And people might think that's really high, but I really, really like Luther Burden. I think
Mm,
people want to box him in as a slot guy, but he's got the size to play
yeah,
outside too. I think
he
he's got
does.
that the skill set to play outside. I really like Luther Burden, but I'm not sure if that's the right call over going with one of the two tight ends here because they're also excellent. And in two different unique kind of skill sets between Warren and Loveland. But I think I am going to go with Luther Burden here at 8. It's higher than he'll go for
Hmm.
sure, but I really, really like the player. Um, I think a pretty safe projection type for me is DJ Moore-ish kind of a player. Like I think that's
Hmm.
the like sort of a likely outcome. I think he could even end up being much better than that. Um, Easily my second favorite receiver in this class, ahead of Tet. Um, Igbuka's interesting too, but he, more traditionally projects into the slot. Uh, Burden I love, and I'm going with him at 8.
Yeah, I think Luther Burden is a fantastic receiver. I took the chance to watch some of his tape a few days ago, and he's a really interesting wide receiver. You see Mizzou use him out of the backfield a lot, and I like that
Mm-hmm.
Debo Samuel kind of comp. They were using him
Oh,
out of the
they
backfield a good
comped him to
amount.
Debo.
What'd you say?
Said they yeah, PFF comped him to Debo.
Yeah, I think they used him in all kinds of creative ways, and I think you should continue to do so in the NFL. And I think you're absolutely right about the whole slot thing. I think he's definitely got the capabilities and the size to play on the outside.
I think you can do all of it. Like I think you can move him around.
100%. I actually got the chance to see this guy up close firsthand, how good he was. I was actually at the Mizzou game where they played Carolina, and he made a one-handed catch to take the lead on 4th and 5 with 1 minute left in the fourth quarter. And it was one of the craziest catches I've ever seen. Um, to take the lead. I mean, this guy's I really do think that he's going to be a great receiver. And I can see the vision with Carolina taking him this high. They did take Leggett last year, but he didn't look too promising. And I definitely think to be able to get a guy like Burden at this point with how the board's fallen, I think it could make sense. And I definitely could see that happening with the way that this board has fallen. Just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think they're still in a position where they saw some encouraging stuff from Bryce at the end of last year. I think they want to put him in a spot where they want to know 100% after this year, can this guy be our franchise quarterback? The Bucks and Pistons are fighting. Um, can this guy be our franchise quarterback? And I think getting him another weapon is a good way to do that. I also think going Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland is on the table here. I think tight end's possible, and that's another way to support a young quarterback with a good tight end. Um,
Hmm.
but I think I really really like Burden, and this is like we've talked about this before, but this is a weird draft class where there's not. We think maybe there's most teams have 14, 15, 16 first round grades on guys in the entire draft class. I haven't done the I you know I haven't done the exercise of looking into everybody in the class, but I've taken
Yeah.
a look and read about some of the, I think Burden is a guy that a lot of guys have in that group, rightfully so.
Hmm.
Right. On to the
Yeah.
Saints. This is
All
an
right.
interesting one, a very interesting one, especially
Hmm.
we got today.
I was gonna say the Saints pick has become very interesting, especially very recently today, with the news about Derek Carr potentially missing the rest of the season because of a shoulder injury. We don't really know what the injury is, but they said that there's a risk that he's not going to play the entire 2025 season. So yeah, I already thought even if Carr was going to be here, that if a quarterback were to fall to them, that they would definitely consider taking that as their play. And now with that news, I think that they have to go quarterback here, especially with the way that their cap is still situated at. I feel like we mention this every single year, but I mean, it's like they can't even afford to lose games with the amount of cap space problems that they're in. So I'm gonna have them take Shadur Sanders, which even at 9, I think is still definitely a reach. I think a lot of people have started to kind of realize and come to terms that Shedeur is kind of not that same tier of elite quarterback prospect that I guess he was getting hype as while he was playing. And obviously he's got the name. He's Dion's kid, and he played great in college. But I just don't think his film is all that positive. It's not great to see. He's always like for the 2 years he played at Colorado, he was one of the most sacked quarterbacks in both of those years. And Colorado had a really shitty offensive line. Um, but they also did have a lot of plays where Shedeur was to blame for holding onto the ball too long and trying to make something happen and eventually taking a sack. Um, I do think that like with all the negative things that I'm mentioning, I do think that there are some positives. I think he's really accurate. And I think that as far as being a pocket passer, he is pretty solid. You do get a lot of good tools that he has. You see a lot of that in the film. With some of the balls he's able to fit some balls into some really tight holes. Pause. Um, but and even playing with Travis Hunter, who makes him look a lot better in some scenarios, I do think that he is a pretty good passer. But yeah, I really just think he has a problem with holding onto the ball, and I don't really think he's all that mobile either. I kind of comped him to Kirk Cousins, but I even feel like Kirk Cousins at his best is going to be better than Shedeur was. But like I had mentioned, I think that the Saints kind of have to go with quarterback here, and he's the only guy I'd feel comfortable taking in the first round.
Yeah, I think it's funny that he would go to the team with Derek Carr because I think there's a lot of similarities between him as a prospect and Carr when
Hmm.
he came out at Fresno State. I
Hmm.
think Bridgewater's another guy that comes to mind with the comp. I think Shador is incredibly accurate and has, as far as a pure thrower of the football in terms of his touch, with regard to touch and football, no, he he is super accurate and can really fit something into a window that's closing, not in terms of like velocity, but in terms of lofting it between a couple defenders. He's really a really pure thrower of the football. With
Hmm.
that said, I think his biggest problem is he's got that Teddy Bridgewater, Derek Carr athleticism, which is more than enough to be a good NFL starting quarterback. But he thinks he's his dad athletically, and he's trying to avoid sacks and run around like he's Deion Sanders.
Hmm.
He's not, he does that's one of the best athletes. It's got to be a little weird for somebody to be like, oh, I should be this. I'm Shadur Sanders. I'm this like popular. I should be this, super flashy quarterback, but he's not that kind of a player.
Uh-uh.
His arm
No.
talent's just mediocre. It's fine. It's enough, but it's not overwhelming. He's not going to be like zipping the ball into tight windows. Um, and if you're not going to be that and you're still going to be an elite prospect, you kind of have to be like Joe Burrow, where you're like Drew Brees level,
Hmm.
precise and in the pocket, drop back, take your step, hit your guy, maybe occasionally break out. And he's not that. He's nowhere close. So I think I actually kind of think it's like I think it's unlikely Shadur Sanders sucks, but I also think it's equally unlikely that he's ever a top five guy
Mm-mm.
or
I
really
don't
even
think
a
so.
top 10 guy. I think
Really.
he's going to be, I think you're hoping he's perennially a middle of the pack quarterback,
Mhm.
maybe pushing like that 12 area, maybe, like a Dak Prescott type area. Maybe he gets there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the Saints go this way. They're trapped, right? They're trapped in their situation. They can't get rid of their old guys and they're going to have to keep
It's
rolling
so
over
bad.
forever. Eventually, they're going to have to take their medicine, but that's going to take years to do.
Yeah,
All right.
and look, I mean, just really quickly, look, I mean, with the cap problems they have, getting a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal, and if he does turn out good, that's going to do wonders for them with their money. They can get
Yeah.
off Carr like comfortably at that point because you have the rookie contract and good quarterback. So that could definitely help a lot
Yeah.
as well.
It's twofold, and I think it's the best way to take their medicine without totally
Yeah.
bottoming them out. But it will suck that they're gonna have like the whole point of a rookie quarterback is like, all right, we have this like what like the Commanders are doing. We have this rookie quarterback. Now we can go spend. Not
Mhm.
really going to be an option. It'll take by the time they're actually in a window where like they can take advantage of him being cheap. He'll have like 2 years left on his deal. But I think this is
Yeah.
what they should do and what will happen. All right,
Mhm.
on to the Chicago Bears. Um, an interesting team here. I think they did a lot to overhaul their offensive line. I think if Campbell was there, they'd still take him to fill out that one final spot. But I don't think that's what they do here because he's not there, and because I think there are better options not at offensive line.
Mhm.
Um, Again, I think Tyler Warren's probably the best player on the board, and I'd lean, I think I'd lean that way here. Um,
Mhm.
I'd consider running back, but if Jefty's there, I'd be thrilled, but I don't think he'll get to them there. Um, I think Tyler Warren's the way I'm going to go here. You know they have Cole Kmet, they don't need him, but I think the Bears are kind of in a spot where they don't have a ton of desperate needs across the
No.
roster. Like here, like it has the needs listed here as running back, D line, and safety. They have some decent players. You know, they have first of all, you can find running backs later. D line, they have some decent players. Safety is something you can patchwork, and they have some guys there. So I think
Mhm.
Tyler Warren is a unique prospect as like a gadget tight end, where Komet's more of a pure receiver, and then Warren is, you know, the comp everyone gives is Dallas Clark, where he's this
Yeah.
like H back slash tight end, kind of like Brock Bowers in some ways, just not nearly. If Brock Bowers is that in his A plus at everything he does, Warren's A minus
Mhm.
at everything he does. I think he's a good player, and I think he can really. I think Ben Johnson would be thrilled to have a player like this he can move around and play with. Um, and
100%.
they can
Yeah.
run some two tight end sets. I think it makes a lot of sense with them at 10.
I think him, yeah, he's a little complicated as a tight end prospect because, yeah, I mean, he's just I don't know. Some of his receiver film isn't the best, and it's not like obviously he put up great numbers at Penn State as a receiver. But there's definitely some stuff that you'd want to see from him as a receiver. Just, getting his hands out and getting to the ball before some of these other guys, and just I don't know. I just feel like there there are definitely concerns as a receiver. I think he's going to be a great blocker as well for the position. And yeah, I think that he's a Swiss Army knife. And I think you should continue to do that with him. I think in general with players that are kind of like this, where you can use them in a lot of different ways, kind of like Burden, kind of like Travis Hunter. I think if they have the skill to be able to be used in these weird and funky ways, I think you should take every chance you can get and try that with these guys. And I think Tyler Warren is definitely of that kind of caliber of Swiss Army knife type player. I think that you can do some really funky stuff with him. And like you said, the Bears have kind of done a really good job building out this roster recently. So I think that they can definitely afford taking a best player available off the board here at number 10. So I do like that pick, and I think that could definitely happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the ceiling is pretty clear. It's the idea is you hope he's George Kittle. Um,
Uh-huh.
I doubt that he'll be George Kittle, but he could be somewhere around there and be a really fun player for them. All right.
Mhm.
Now on to George Kittle's actual team at number 11 for you.
Yeah, so number 11. So I was looking around a little bit here as to where I have some of these guys on my board personally. And I think that with the needs of the 49ers, I think there were two guys that I was considering going with here. Actually, three. Um, and I guess I'll just list them off really quickly and then I'll mention who I'm going to take out of the three. But I was thinking about Will Johnson from Michigan, Michael Williams from Georgia, and Kelvin Banks. And I think that I'm going to go with Will Johnson. I think that the secondary is their biggest need right now as far as on the defensive side of the ball. I do think they could use an edge, and I also think that they could use some offensive line help. But man, looking at their depth chart, I mean, their two starting corners right now are Trey Brown and Demondre Lenore. I definitely think to be able to get Will Johnson at pick 11, who I do think is actually a really, really good prospect as a corner. I think he's really great in coverage. I think he's a little bit smaller. He gets abused in man, and he sometimes does get lost on the field and loses the receiver, and he lets up some really huge plays. Um, throughout his college career. But I mean, this guy is crazy fast. He's a really good athlete. And he played in an elite conference. I mentioned it a lot with some of these guys, but he played in the Big Ten, played against some great receivers. And yeah, I think he's going to be a great coverage guy. And I really do think that he will help the 49ers with their struggling secondary.
Yeah, I like it a lot. He's tall. He's got that going for him, but he is
Mhm.
pretty skinny. Um, but some of these guys put on size. I like it a lot. He's one of my favorite corners in the class. Um, my besides obviously Travis Hunter, he's probably the most universal, like my favorite outside corner because I think Barron is an interesting player, but
Mhm.
I like Will Johnson there. All right, Dallas at 12 is a super interesting one. They could go in any number of directions here. Um, this is a running back spot, possibly. This is an edge rusher spot.
Mhm.
This is a receiver spot. Tet is an interesting idea here. Um, but I think I want to go edge here for
Mhm.
Dallas and get someone on the other side of
Parsons. Yeah.
Parsons. And for me, it would be between um either Michael Williams or James Pierce Jr. Honestly, both of those guys are a little raw. I'm actually gonna go receiver. I'm gonna go Tet here.
Okay.
Just because I feel safer about what he is at this point than the edge rushers. I like a lot of the edge rushers in this class, but
Mhm.
I think the after we get off Abdul Carter, it's a lot of betting on traits. I think Tet is I don't think he gets a lot of Mike Evans and like Drake London comps. I don't see that. I think the better comp is kind of Michael Pittman-ish. And
Mhm.
it's a good player. He's great at attacking the ball. I worry with some of these big receivers when I go in to watch. I'm like, is it going to be like Quentin Johnston where they're catching the ball with a chest all the time? And I think it's a little overstated when people catch. It's okay to do it occasionally, but
Mhm.
I think Tet's good at attacking the ball like that. I think he's a much crisper route runner than QJ was coming out, which was my first worry. But I think Pittman's
Yeah.
a good comp for Tet. A big bodied receiver to play opposite CD, I think makes a lot of sense. Where you can move CD into the slot, you can move him outside, you can do a lot of things with that. So I think Tet makes sense here. Honestly, I would love having the optionality of getting Luther Burden here at 12 if I
Mhm.
had taken him already. I think that's probably the actual ceiling of where he could go in the draft is around
Mhm.
12 to Dallas, and I would be an amazing fit. But I think Tet makes some sense as well.
Yeah. And something to note is at Arizona, I mean, he was getting so much attention from some of these corners and some of these defensive coordinators. And to be able to play alongside CD is definitely going to be a lot different for him, which I definitely think he could, um, you know, really dominate off of. And I do think that he could be a really, really, really good receiver in the NFL. Yeah, there are some definite concerns like you had mentioned. But yeah, I think that this is where they're going to go. I do think that they're going to go receiver. Um, I don't know if they're going to reach on a running back here. And, maybe they could go edge if they really do like Michael Williams or maybe Pierce or maybe Green or Stewart.
Yeah,
One of
Jalen
those.
Walker is one of the
But
names. I was wondering why he wasn't listed as an edge. I guess PFF considers him a inside linebacker, but I think Jalen Walker is probably looked at as an edge by most of the
mhm,
people in this class. He's 6'2". He's not giant, but I think he probably gets picked as an edge, and he could be,
mhm.
that's another guy. I think if I was gonna have taken edge here, I think that's the guy I would have gone with. I was a little confused when I pulled up edge and he wasn't there.
And you saw linebacker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they haven't listed linebacker. But I think Tat is a good pick here. And I think it makes sense.
Yeah. So moving on to 13, we have the Dolphins. And they have had some recent news that changed the way I looked at their draft pick as well. Teron Armstead, their left tackle, just retired, which leaves a massive hole at left tackle, which you really,
Don't like.
really, really do not want with what's going on with Tua. So I think you have to take a tackle here. And I think my favorite tackle out of the guys here is Kelvin Banks. Um, I do think that there are some things that you should be worried about with him. He could be a better fit at guard, like we had mentioned with some of these other guys, and we said we're going to see that later on in the draft. I do think, as far as getting engaged with some of the defensive linemen, he kind of struggles to find where to put his hands and kind of connect with some of these edges, which leads to him getting beat a lot. Um, I kind of comped him to Kristen Darasaw, who was really amazing in the NFL, and I think that Kelvin Banks has that potential as well. I think he's got really good footwork. I think he's really, when he does get connected with the guy, I think he's pretty consistently winning, and he is a pretty big offensive lineman, but there definitely are some concerns as far as his size and reach go that lead to him maybe going to guard. But I do think that the Dolphins really need to go and protect Tua here, and I think that Kelvin Banks is a good enough guy to be able to be happy with taking him at pick 13. So that's who
Yeah,
I'm going to go.
I think he's definitely the best offensive lineman available at that point. I don't know if he projects the cleanest at tackle. Um, but I think Simmons is like if Simmons didn't have the injury stuff, I think he's a guy who would go around here.
Hmm.
Um, but
I agree with that as well. Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think we could see Gray Zabel going around here. I don't know that I like that idea. I kind of like Connerly and Donovan Jackson a little bit more, but that makes some sense. All right, Colts are on the clock here at 14. Lots of ways this could go. I've seen
Mhm.
a ton of people mocking Colston Loveland here. I like that, but I think I'm going to go in a different direction. Um, I think I think here is where the slide stops for Jalen Walker. I guess they
Mhm.
don't consider him a slide. They have him ranked 28th. I think most things I've seen have him going somewhere in the top 10. And I think they could play him if I think he projects as an edge rusher. I
Mhm.
think the Colts could use an edge rusher here, and that makes a ton of sense. But there's also a world where he is an inside linebacker or it's kind of a gadget thing. I think we're starting to see in the league play. We used to have these tweeners and they would never really work out, but I think we're starting to see the tweeners start to find homes more often. Especially
Absolutely.
like yeah,
Yeah.
with like the Kyle Hamiltons of the world at different positions. But I think Jalen Walker makes a lot of sense for the Colts as either an inside linebacker, but probably an edge rusher. I'd be surprised if he falls this far come draft day.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. He's been a really big riser recently in these draft boards and in these mock drafts. And I do like him as a prospect. He is definitely, like you said, going to be um, a possible tweener in the league as far as edge and linebacker. But the Colts do need both of those positions. They can use him in both areas. I think you're going to want him to play edge for you just because um, obviously that's going to make more of an impact as far as getting wins in the NFL is to be able to get to the quarterback. I think he is a stud athlete at the position. I do think he is a bit undersized, which again, like you mentioned, it hasn't been a problem for some of these tweeners. And there's no real reason to see why it should be a problem for him. Um, he excelled at Georgia against some of the best teams in college, as far as getting to the quarterback, and then also at playing linebacker. Um, I do think that he's going to be really good, and I think as far as his peak of what you are really hoping to get out of him is just like a bigger Shaq Leonard, who was also on the Colts. Both of them are 6'2". He's got more strength and more just more, he's got bigger thighs, he's got bigger biceps, he's just a bit stronger, a bit bigger. But I think that you could see him as kind of similar athletes at the edge slash linebacker position. And I think that that's what the Colts might see in him. So I think that that makes a lot of sense.
On to Atlanta.
Uh, moving on to 15, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Um, and Atlanta. I'm trying to see. I think that I'm going to go with Michael Williams here, the edge from Georgia, right after Jelon Walker, another edge from Georgia. Um, I think Michael Williams is a really interesting prospect. I think that he comps out to be I think a reasonable comp is Greg Rousseau. I think he could play. I think he's got a lot of that in his game and in his like what he is, his size, his long arms, and just how he plays in his film. I think his peak could be like 49ers Alden Smith. Another guy with really long arms, and just another really stud guy at getting around these tackles and getting to the quarterback. I think Michael Williams definitely has some concerns with his hand fighting, and he's just a really raw talented edge, which is something you might not really want in the draft with your first round edge. But at pick 15, I think you're willing to take a shot on a guy that has some really high potential. And the Falcons really need some pass rush. So I think that they're going to be willing to take that risk. And yeah, he does have the tools to possibly turn it around and to possibly be a great edge in the NFL. I really do think that his ridiculously long arms is going to be a huge plus for him. It's really noticeable in the film that I watched. Just him literally being able to get to a tackle with one hand and just leave him out with one arm and be able to just swim under him and get around to the quarterback. And a lot of these linemen in the NFL are better than college, obviously, but he was doing this pretty constantly, and his arm size is not going to change. So I think with the right coaching, and in the right situation, he could be really good. And I think the Falcons are willing to take that chance, to possibly get a boom prospect here at number 15.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think the Judon ad last year shows that need, and it was kind of a dud. So I think
Mhm.
drafting here makes a lot of sense. All right. Arizona, I think they would have loved if Kelvin Banks was on the board here. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think interior offensive line is a need. Um, some people like to project Zabel to move inside. I don't love that. I like Tyler Booker a good bit. He feels, a really productive guard out of Alabama. That's definitely not a guy who's playing tackle, but he is an interior offensive lineman. I'm very confident he'll be at least pretty good. Um,
Mhm.
and that's a name I'm interested in. But, I think with the way the board has fallen here, I think, I like Trey Amos a bit too. I think okay, there's a guy I'm kind of in love with at corner that's not going to go this high, but he's one of my favorite corners in the class. People are a little worried about his health, but I watched some of his tape from 2 years ago, and I think he's a lock top 15, maybe even top 10-ish pick if he was fully healthy. And the tape was from 2 years ago. I think Benjamin Morrison at
Mhm.
Notre Dame is an excellent corner. I think he is one of the cleanest corners in this class. Paulson Adebo, I think that's a disrespectful comp. Although Paulson Adebo is not a bad player, but I think he's a lot better than that. Um, I think he projects as one of the best man corners in this class. If he's right, if he looks like he looked like 2 years ago, um, and I think you can plug and play him outside, and I really really like him. I think Barron is probably the way they would go in this situation, but I'm my two guys who I am way higher on than most consensus is Burden and Benjamin Morrison. I wanted to make sure one of my teams here got both those guys, so I'm going with him here at
Mhm.
16 for Arizona.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I think it's going to be between if the board does fall this way, I think that they're going to definitely decide between him, maybe Barron, and maybe, an Amos, or maybe um a Revel.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that they definitely do need to go with a corner here. I think that's a big need for them. And I think Morrison, as far as just with the general need for corner, I think you prefer to take someone who could potentially be an elite outside corner that can take another X receiver. Barron really is going to be a nickel guy, and I think if you're looking for just a corner that could eventually take an X receiver for you, you're not going to want to go that way. And I think Morrison's a very respectable pick here. Playing for Notre Dame against some great teams, he put on some really good tape. And yeah, like you said, there are definitely some injury concerns. So if he can overcome those, I definitely think this could be a really good pick
I
for them.
I think this is the type of guy that he's going to be off a bunch of people board. Blah, 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 blah. I think he's definitely going to be completely off of some people's boards because he's just like the medical staff just is like not confident in it.
Hmm.
And I think other teams will have him rank somewhere in the top 20 of their overall board.
Mhm.
And it only takes one, and I have no idea if Arizona's will be that one, but I think we could go higher than people expect. I think most people have him as an early to mid second rounder. But I'd feel if you're comfortable with the medical, I'd feel fully comfortable taking him here at
Yeah.
60.
Hmm. And that's what it's going to come down to for some of these teams is if they're just comfortable
Yeah.
with what these guys have
Yeah,
shown
we're at the
medically.
point in this draft class. I mean, I think Barron's one of the Barron, Campbell, or a couple of I think some people like Mike Green too, Buka.
Mhm.
We're getting to the point now where in most years, most of these guys are day two picks. Uh,
Yep.
so it's a lot less clear cut.
All right. So on to pick 17, Cincinnati Bengals. Boo.
Ooh, they're
I
taking
have to
Jackson
act like their
Dart.
GM, so I have to make the right pick here, or what I think would be the right pick for this team. And I'm deciding between two guys, and they're kind of right next to each other on my board. I think the Bengals kind of have to go defense here, especially with the way the board's kind of fallen. Their defense was, especially their pass rush and just defensive line in general, was like embarrassingly bad. I don't really know what's going on with Trey Hendrickson either. So it could possibly get even worse. And the guys I were deciding between were Shamar Stewart and Nick Imnawari, who is the safety from South
Ooh,
Carolina.
I
And I
love,
think that they
yeah.
need safety as well. But I do think Shamar Stewart is where I'm going to go here, out of Texas A&M. I think that his college production is really concerning, and it's definitely something to note. But this guy as an athlete is statistically the best we've seen at the edge position ever recorded. He got a 10 RAS score, which was ranked number one, I think, since they've been tracking it. Um, and I think his peak comp is going to be like a Jadeveon Clowney type player, maybe a Trayvon Walker, how he's currently playing. I mean, this guy does have the potential athletically to make a massive difference on the edge and be a huge game wrecker as far as on the with the run, especially with the run, and then with the pass as well. But I do think his college production is definitely a concern. I mean, he was getting like 2 or 3 sacks each season, and I mean that's not what you want to see out of a first round pick, obviously, but he is that one of one athlete, and I think that you may be willing to take that risk with how bad that defensive line looked last year.
I think Clowney's a good comp. Not as like a prospect, because obviously Clowney was an unbelievable prospect, but in that Clowney was like a productive pass rusher his whole career, but could never finish plays.
Mhm.
He'd beat guys occasionally, he'd overpower guys occasionally, but he could never really get the final move on. And then was an he I really don't think Clowney gets enough credit for how unbelievable he was in run defense his entire career.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that's a good comp there. And I think it makes sense for them. But I think defense makes a lot of sense. Campbell's a guy I would consider there too, because
Yeah.
they need help anywhere they can get it on defense. They got a lot of problems on defense.
It's bad. It's
Yeah, it's
bad.
real bad. And it's only going to get worse with these contracts coming into, kick in here soon with the receivers. All right, on to
Absolutely.
Seattle. I actually am not thinking too hard about this at all. I want Tyler Booker. They desperately need interior offensive line help. Tyler Booker, I'm very confident as a starting caliber NFL interior offensive lineman. Um, Probably projects as a guard. I'm sure he could slide into center as well. Um, but yeah, they've taken if if Sam Darnold gets pressured the way Geno Smith was getting pressured, he is going to crumble. So they
Hmm.
desperately need offensive line help. I wouldn't be surprised if they go guard center in their first two picks. I think they need the help that bad. I know some people would like to go edge here for them, but I have to. I just think they're too desperate to protect Sam Darnold up the interior.
Yeah, and to get a guy like this who's been a starter at a school like Alabama is definitely, really good for them. And like you said, with what we saw from Sam Darnold, especially towards the end of the year with Minnesota, with he was getting pressured and just looked like a completely different quarterback than he did for the earlier part of that season. I think you kind of have to go with the offensive line here. And yeah, I think like you said, I think Booker is going to be pretty good. I think that he's absolutely a reasonable pick here, and I think that that's probably where I'd go as well. And I think with the contract they're giving Sam Darnold, I definitely think that they are going to look to protect him. So I think this is a good pick, and I think this is probably where they're going to go if this is how the board falls.
Yeah, I think Zabel's a guy that I don't know what to make of him because he's huge. I feel like he's a tackle, but I think some people are projecting him as this like not that he's nearly as big as Mekhi Becton, but this like oversized guard. I'm
Hmm.
just not so sure. I'm sure one of us will take him here, and he's definitely got the tools to be projected as a first rounder. But I feel a lot more comfortable with how I feel Tyler Booker is going to pan out as a guard.
Hmm. 100%, 100%. I agree with you. Yeah.
On to
So
Tampa.
Tampa Bay, number 19.
I know how I'd go here, but we'll see.
Hmm. 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 What do they need? I think I'm gonna go Mike Green here,
Interesting.
the
Okay.
edge rusher from Marshall. I think I feel like when I think of guys that I've liked in past years coming out of college that might have been a little bit unpopular, I've always liked the guys that just put up really good numbers in college, even if draft analysts will be saying that, their film doesn't look like they're going to track to the NFL. I think Mike Green isn't exactly that kind of guy. I really do think that his film looked really good. He looked amazing during the Senior Bowl practices and during the Senior Bowl in general. Um, he led college in sacks last year, and I want to check the number just to make sure. Um, he led the college in sacks and tackles for loss last year. It's 17 sacks and 23 tackles for loss, respectively. He played for Marshall, which isn't the best, and he played for UVA. And I'll tell you, don't look at why he got kicked off of UVA, but definitely a little bit of a concern, to say the least. But I have him comped to like an Alex Highsmith type player. I think that's kind of like the build he has.
A good call.
Um, just like bulky and not like massive, but like your stereotypical edge size. I mean, like I said, he's dominant in college, and I think that they need to go get a playmaker for that defense off of the defensive line. Um, I think the guy that they took a few years ago isn't still on the team, Joe Tryon Shoyinka. He is not.
I'm not sure.
It looks like they're starting Logan Hall and Kalia Cansey, who they took last year at their edges. So
Cansey's a interior guy.
yeah, which is definitely interesting. But I think that Mike Green could be the pick here, and I think that he could be a really good NFL player. And I think his college production shows that he's got that level of talent.
I think the opposite kind of player from Shamar Stewart. I
Yeah.
think if
Hmm.
Shamar Stewart's like a clowny type, I think Mike Green is a little bit Elvis Dumerville in that it's a pass rusher specialist to sort of say. He's
Absolutely. Yeah.
kind of going
This
to get
guy is a
dominated in
third
the run
down
game.
and long specialist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's gonna get a bit. You can work on it, become viable, but I don't know that he makes a lot of sense in the run game. All right, on
20.
on to the Denver Broncos. Um,
Interesting pick here.
yeah,
Yeah.
interesting pick here. I think skill. I think you want to help out Bo Nix here. I think I'm ready to go. A Marion Hampton here.
I
Um,
like that.
I think he's probably, in my opinion, I think he's the second best running back in this class. What do they have
Hmm.
to comp to? Rashard Mendenhall? Yeah, he's a big, powerful back. And I think having a bruiser like that in that offense with Sean Payton makes a lot of sense. And someone Bo Nix could lean on because they tried to run the ball last year. They ran the ball a lot. They weren't very good at it. And which is crazy because the O-line was quite good. They were getting a ton of yards before contact and they couldn't get any extra yards.
Hmm.
And I think running back makes a lot of sense here. Um, the roster's really good, man. They did a really good job in free agency too. They added Drake Greenlaw, right? They added Hufanga. They're just taking all the Niners defensive players. But I think they're in a really strong spot. I think they added a lot on defense. I don't love Bo Nix, but I think he's shown he's an NFL starting quarterback. And I think Sutton's a fine wide receiver to have around as their one. You'd still want to go receiver sometime in the day two, but I really like Marion Hampton here. I think this is probably around his, I wouldn't say it's floor. He could go lower than this, but I think it's very reasonable to take him here.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that he is a really good running back prospect, and he's been shooting up boards recently. And I think that that is a reasonable thing for people to see in him. I think that he is going to be a really quality NFL starter. And I think that he's someone you can definitely lean on as your go-to guy, as your starting running back going forward. And especially with how the Broncos are kind of looking at the future with Bo Nix and how Javonte Williams left. I think that they have a big hole at running back, and I think Omarion Hampton is probably the best pure guy that you'd want as your go-to starter here on the board. I had him comped. I'm gonna find him on my notes. I had him comped to like, see, I don't want to say peak Zeke Elliott, but he's got a lot of similarities to Ezekiel Elliott as far as his play style and Zeke's play style. I don't know if he's that level of athlete, but they're both bruising, kind of not massive, but they run really tough. They're hard to bring down. And I think that Denver, like I said, has a big hole at the running back spot. So I think this is a good pick.
Yeah. All right.
All right,
On to your
21, the
favorite
Pittsburgh
team, the
Steelers.
Pittsburgh Steelers. Boo.
Boo, boo. All
Boo.
right.
Give them Jackson Dart.
All right, guys, you're gonna laugh at me. I'm actually not gonna pick this guy, but I I don't I they are in such a weird spot. If they were to go into the draft today, oh my God, it's so like I really don't know what they're gonna do. I could see them possibly trading back, but like, do you want to do that with how like you need a good player for this team right now. And the way like after the two quarterbacks that have gone, it is bleak. And I mean bleak. I could see them going with if Milrow falls to them in the second round. I think that that's where they should go. Take a chance on him, maybe because of the athlete that he is. Um, I think that, I think that they're gonna go with. I think that they're gonna go with Nick Eamon is who I would take at this spot from South Carolina, and he rose draft boards during the combine because of the combine performance he put on, and he's gone back down, I think, a little bit um, in recent mocks, and I'm not really sure why. His film, there definitely are some concerns as far as him making some tackles and just not being the smartest when it comes to getting guys down and when to kind of commit to making a tackle. He doesn't have that great of an IQ when it comes to that part of his game. But I think that he is a superstar athlete, and I think that he is just he's a really weird kind of safety. He's not obviously Kyle Hamilton good, but he is built like kind of a Kyle Hamilton type safety, and he is a crazy freak athlete. So I guess you can kind of see the vision with that. And they have Minka Fitzpatrick already, but I don't know. I can definitely see Pittsburgh taking a guy like Eamon Warren and using him kind of as a Swiss Army type guy where they put him at linebacker. Maybe they put him in coverage as well. And he's just kind of like a guy that they use all around the field because of that athletic specimen that he is. So I think that that's where I'm going to go here. And I, obviously, coming from South Carolina, being a Gamecock, I'm a big fan of his game. And I think that if I was the GM of this team, I could definitely see him being a pretty big time boom prospect that could possibly change the way that this defense plays football.
Yeah. I love him. I think he's a fun, special kind of athlete.
Hmm.
My dad was texting me about him. He's like, you know, we should take him as the Ravens at pick a 20.
I would be so happy
And
if
I
we can.
was like, man, it's an interesting one. I don't know that I think we're more likely to go corner than safety or some guy
Mhm.
who's like kind of flexible. Honestly, Barron would be incredible.
Yeah.
I yeah, he's such a fun player. All right, on to the Chargers. This is one I'm not even thinking all the, ooh, I did I oh man.
You are thinking.
I didn't realize Matthew Golden was still here. I I think I like Igbokwe more than Matthew Golden.
Mm.
And I think this is righting the wrong of when they passed on Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, and JSN for Quentin Johnston. I think Emeka Igbokwe is about as safe as it gets. I worry, but do I? No, I'm going to go Matthew Golden. I changed my mind because I think Igbokwe is a safer player. I think he's definitely going to be good, but I think there's some stepping on toes that would go on with Lad McConkey. I think Igbokwe, not that he can only play in the slot, but I think unlike Burden, I think that actually is kind of a valid um,
Hmm.
place he could end up. Loveland's also interesting there, but I feel good about Golden as a speed deep threat and vertical true X receiver for them to play. Um, Now, even they'd have a much better receiver room with Ladd, Golden, and then Mike Williams than they've been working with
Yeah.
to this point.
I think that this is definitely a big time possibility for them. And yeah, if I was the GM here for the Los Angeles Chargers and I'm looking at the receiver room, I don't know. I personally just go with the most talented guy there rather than the guy that's going to be an X, which is what they probably need more.
Yeah,
But I think
this is
Ibuka
the
is just,
exact mistake they made 2 years ago.
yeah, I think you just
But
make the talent pick. Just pick based off talent and what you think that that guy's going to do in the NFL, regardless of where he's going to line up on the field. I think that Ibuka is a really it might be the safest receiver in the draft besides Travis Hunter. Um,
they don't have a
he elected to stay an extra year at Ohio State, obviously with NIL playing a factor. He probably could have gone to the draft last year and would have been picked first round last year and just continued his dominance. Stay Hot, the podcast that I really enjoy watching, kind of made a little joke that he was literally just an NFL receiver playing in college last year. Um, and I think that he's going to be a really good player all around. I think that he showcased a lot as a blocker for his size. And as far as getting um, catches and being a reliable target, I think that he's going to be a really good player. And he dominated at Ohio State in a constantly loaded Ohio State wide receiver room. He's got reliable hands, and yeah, I think it's a
yeah,
good pick.
the comp is Cooper Cup, right? He's like this power slot, but can also play outside a little, but
Yeah,
I don't know how
like a
much.
Cup, a Godwin maybe could
Yeah.
be another comp.
That's a
Yeah,
good yeah. Yeah, maybe that makes more sense, but I'm not going back on it, but I might agree with you there.
yeah,
Um,
I think that he's going to be a really good player though.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I think Golden has a lot more, oh, this is a fuck up potential, which is not what the Chargers need. But I do think
Mhm.
there's a chance that he's kind of the field stretcher they need because I don't think Igbok is that, and they don't really. If Mike Williams isn't that guy, they don't really have that at all, especially now that Josh Palmer's gone. So, I think to stretch the field and keep it that way, I think Golden makes some sense. But yeah, I think you're right on Igbok, which
Yeah.
could be a guy for here, but the Packers allow those. But here we go. I'll let you go. We might
Yeah. So number
go long. We'll
23.
try and speed up. My computer might die. We'll try and go a
Oh
little.
yeah. All right. Number 23. I think that the Packers, there's been some talks about Jair possibly getting moved. And I think that there's a real chance that that might happen. Um, if he stays there though, I don't know if they would go. I don't know.
He's fallen,
I
man.
think
I feel like we gotta.
uh I think I'm gonna go Jahdae Barron
Yeah.
here for the Packers. I think he's clearing away the most talented player left on the board. I think a lot of guys had um a lot of mock draft guys had him going a lot higher than this, and I think that he's that level of corner. He's gonna be your nickel, and that's what he's gonna be in the NFL. He's a lot like Cooper DeJean, um, as far as being a physical corner. He's a bit on the bigger side, strength wise.
Comped him to Stephon Gilmore. I don't see that at all.
I don't know about that. Yeah. I really do like how people have been talking about him and DeJean. I think that he is that kind of player. I think that he is like, I think he's going to make a big difference in the run game. He's physical. And
Yeah.
I think as far as coverage, he's really good as well. He played against good comp in the SEC. And yeah, I think that you might not want him in coverage compared to some other of these first round corners. But yeah, I think as far as being a physical guy, he's the most physical corner in this draft.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that this could be a great pick for them. I think that they probably would have wanted Igbuka, and to have him go right before is
He
probably
didn't
pretty
go. He's still
painful.
there. I took Golden,
But
remember?
Matthew Golden,
Yeah, I took Golden. So Ibuka was still there.
oh, you did take Golden. Oh, well, I can't go back now. Um, I'm still gonna go Baron.
I
Um,
respect it.
Igbuka continues to fall.
Ibuka continues to
But
fall.
yeah, I think Barron is still like a top 15 talent in this draft, and I don't think I think the Packers would be really happy getting him at this point in the draft. And I think a lot of people would be surprised if he fell this far as well.
I think it's important to note, I definitely think he can play outside. I just think that would be kind of a waste of his talent. And I don't think he would be the best at it. I think he's good in zone, and I think he's a real physical tackler and support in the run game. So I think you're going to get the most out of him playing him inside. But if you're, in base sets, you can play him outside, and there's other places to move him. But I think he's a versatile player, but I think inside is where you'll see him the most. All right. On to the Minnesota Vikings. This guy's fallen too far. I'm taking Malachi Starks. I don't know that they
Mhm.
need him right now, but their roster's in a pretty strong place. Harrison Smith's old as shit. Uh,
Unk. He's an unk,
yeah, yeah.
bro.
I
Yeah.
think he
You need
makes a
to
lot
get ready to move on from
as a
him. Yeah.
successor there and as a partner with him back there. If you would like for the time being, and if they have a lot of they have some DBs, but they could definitely use some help there. Um, I think it's a pretty simple pick. People like to comp him to what Javon. Let's see what they have. Javon Holland, Kevin Byard. Yeah, it's a great comp.
Yep.
Um, I don't know that there's a world where he's this insane, high impact Kyle Hamilton, Harrison Smith type player, but I'm
Mm-mm.
very confident he's going to be a good safety for a long time.
Mhm.
All right. On to the Texans. This could be a good spot for you to let stop the fall.
Um,
Or they need O-line bad too. So
See, they have Nico Collins, so I think I'm still gonna go Josh Simmons here because their offensive line is really bad. Um, and you have a talent in CJ Stroud. I want to protect him. And I think Simmons, if they're confident with the medicals, I think that they should go with him. I think he put some really good film out there at Ohio State against some really great players. He's a really big offensive lineman. He's got some really good footwork. Um, I'm pretty sure he was really good at getting connected to some of these edges and stopping them in the Big Ten or the Big 12, I believe. And yeah, he's an explosive lineman for how big he is. And like I said, he's really good at getting connected to some of these linemen and not letting go and just, winning outright. And I think that this is what they need to go with here as far as offensive line to protect CJ Stroud. I think that they can either fix the wide receiver with uh, maybe a trade or in the draft next year or maybe a free agent. Um, so I think I'm going to take Josh Simmons here for the Houston Texans, and I
yeah,
think that they will be happy with it.
I think Simmons goes much higher if the knee isn't a concern, but I think he's one of the safer projected tackles in this class. Makes a lot of sense to replace. Why am I blanking on dude's name?
Console?
Tunsil, yeah. Now that he's
Yeah.
gone. All right. Rams here. I'm between two guys, Jihad Campbell, who's fallen too far, and Colston Loveland, who's fallen too far. I'm gonna go Colston
Mhm.
Loveland. I will say that I'm gonna put this out there. Uh, Sean McVay is the type of guy who'd say, "Fuck it, I'm taking Emeka Egbuka, and we're going three receivers. We
We're
know
making it happen. Yeah.
we're doing. Yeah, they don't need him, but there is a way that they definitely could use him. There's a way to use him, essentially in the Cooper Cup role, right? Because they play Devontae and like the outside guy. But I think they like the idea of going Colston Loveland here, a real true pass catching tight end. I think Evan Ingram is a good comp for him. Tyler Eifert type, where it's one of these, really pretty elite pass catchers. Don't love him as a blocker, but he's got the size to develop there. And Sean McVay will make sure he develops there. So I think that's where you go 26, and we'll
Mhm.
throw it to you with the Ravens at 27.
Yeah. And I think that they're looking to be really good on offense right now. Stafford's still there.
Yep.
So I think that taking a tight end, it's a big need for them. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
Um, so moving on to 27, we have the best team in the league, Baltimore Ravens. Um,
I tell you what, man, it's tempting.
it is tempting to go with Buka here, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I believe in Rashad Bateman. I believe in Zay Flowers. I believe in DeAndre Hopkins. Um, I believe in Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, even after what happened in the playoffs. Um, and I'm going to go with the defensive player here, and it's not going to be James Pierce at the edge position. He would be the other guy I would consider here with how the draft has fallen. I don't think we'd go offensive line with Simmons off the board.
Simmons
I'm
or
going to go with
Banks, but
what'd you say?
Simmons or Banks, if they fell, would be interesting, but I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is definitely something we are trying to do as far as getting another offensive lineman in these top picks, but I don't think we're going to reach here. I think I'm going to take Jihad Campbell. I was talking to you earlier about this. Um, I think that we could pick him if he falls to us, and I do really like him as a coverage linebacker next to Roquan Smith. I know we have our guy in Roquan. He's going to be our go-to guy as far as our defense is concerned, as far as our linebacker core is concerned. But losing Patrick Queen was very noticeable as far as our defense went. And I think that honestly, I think Jihad Campbell is a kind of comparable guy to Patrick Queen. I think he is a really great athlete. And I think as far as being a coverage linebacker, he is the best in this class. And that's something Roquan, I think Roquan's definitely a better run defender. I think we can all agree on that. And to be able to have a guy like um like Jihad Campbell be able to play alongside him in that kind of Patrick Queen role um is going to be a huge thing for this defense and could actually make us look a lot better and kind of return to that defense we had 2 years ago compared to kind of the step back it took this year. So I think that we'd be happy with that. Um, and I think that it could be the way we go with the way that this board has fallen.
I love it. Um, I think Pierce would be in consideration. I don't know how they feel about Ezaraku, but he's a guy people seem to
Mhm.
like. Um, I think interior D line's on the board, but I love it. All right, on to the Lions. Igbuka remains interesting here, but I think edge makes a lot of sense here. I'm between Donovan Ezaraku, who I don't like that much, and James Pierce, who I like a ton. But I think there's a gap in how other people tend to evaluate them. But I'm going to go James Pierce, another
Mhm.
one of those athletes who's kind of raw. What do they comp him to? Yeah, Randy Gregory. That's about as raw athlete as it gets. I think Adafe Owe,
Yep.
another guy to comp him to. Um, I trust that coaching staff, although it is a little bit new, but I trust that infrastructure to get him right, play him opposite Aiden Hutchinson, and I think that's an exciting ad for the Lions.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the Za'Darius experience for them
Great.
was a little not what they hoped for, I guess.
Yeah.
With Aiden Hutchinson coming back from injury, obviously you hope he puts up that level of production, but there's definitely concern he doesn't. And taking a guy like Pierce, who looked amazing statistically at Tennessee, and just in general at Tennessee, was a dominant edge rusher. A lot of people raised some concerns about the size. I'm not as big of a hater as far as the size go. I mean, he's still 6'5". He's really lean. Um, but he's a great athlete, and I think that that's going to change. That's not going to change coming into the NFL. Um, I think a comp for him could kind of be like a Dafe Owe.
Yeah.
Um, he's that kind of guy where he's kind of on the skinnier side. Um, I think maybe he could maybe Pierce could bulk up just a little bit more, would be good for him. But I still think he's going to be a great player, and I think he's going to produce. It might not be the high level type of production he did at Tennessee, but I do think he's going to be an 8 or 9 sack guy that's going to be able to get to the quarterback. There's definitely some questions as far as getting him as a difference maker in the run, but I definitely think you're going to get some higher sack numbers out of him. So I think it's a good pick for them. Yeah.
On the Commanders.
Okay. So the Commanders. I'm stopping the fall. We're taking Emeka Egbuka here
Love it.
for the Washington Commanders, who already have Terry McLaurin. Um, and they are definitely similar type of receivers, honestly. I talked about Ibuka earlier. I didn't even realize that Declan took Golden. I'm not gonna lie, I apologize. All my thoughts about Ibuka are the same though. I mean, he is a really solid prospect as far as the receivers go. I really think he's just going to be a really good receiver in the NFL, and I think that's a guarantee. And I think that the Commanders definitely are in need of that with Jane Daniels. I think they could go with an offensive lineman here, maybe a defensive tackle. Um, I think that they go Ibuka here with how good he is, though, especially in college. And just he's definitely falling down this board, and I think they're going to stop that um, right before the Bills as well, who could use a receiver. Um, but yeah, I think that that's where they're going to go with the way that this board is falling.
Yeah, I think I really don't know how much gas Debo has left in the tank.
Yeah.
I think, like the Bears, I mean, the Bears could have gone. Dunze wasn't unbelievable, but people are like, oh, they have Keenan Allen. And I think you're going to see quickly, it's like, oh, I don't know how much juice is left here. I'm glad we took this guy.
Hmm.
Um, Kind of like when the Ravens signed Odell and then we drafted Zay Flowers, and it's like,
Take a chance.
was that really the biggest need? And then they're like, oh yeah, I'm really glad we did that. So I
Hmm.
like that. All right, on to the Buffalo Bills. Here is where I'm going to go Donovan Eziraku. Um, the Bills
Nice.
love guys like this. They love taking these sort of interesting pass rushers that aren't exactly your traditional size. He's real small height wise, but he's beefy. He's 250 pounds, but he's 6'2" for an edge rusher. Um, I think it makes a lot of sense there. Is Von Miller still on the books there? Did they have to cut him?
They cut him,
Yeah,
yes.
so I think it makes a lot of sense. They need edge help pretty bad. Um, and I don't love Ezeraku, but at 30, I think you're getting the value you want there.
Hmm.
All right, on to Kansas City. Before my computer
Um,
dies, I have 16.
yeah, so Kansas City Chiefs, what happened? How you lose the Super Bowl to the Philadelphia Eagles? Um, they have a really glaring hole um, at offensive tackle. So I'm going to take Gray Zabel here. I think that you want to keep winning with Patrick Mahomes for a really long time. I think you need to shore up the offensive line and find a young guy here in the first round who could potentially be a long-term starter at the tackle position. I think that Gray Zabel's a really good player as far as tackles go. He played at NDSU, who has had some pretty great guys come out of there. Obviously they didn't play really anybody of substance, but again, it didn't prove Josh Allen or not Josh Allen, didn't prove Carson Wentz wrong. Trey Lance obviously wasn't good, but um, he was a high level college prospect, and a lot of people believed in him. And I think that the Chiefs might believe in Gray Zabel. And like I said, they may be just willing to take the best guy available at the tackle position with how bad that tackle room is. Joe Tooney was good, but obviously didn't really look great in the Super Bowl. And if they want to keep winning in the playoffs, they're going to have to stop some of these edges, especially like against a Philly, where they've got all these guys on the defensive line that can make a difference. You need a top end guy who might be able to be that level of good. And I
They're
think
gonna
that
have to
Zabel's where they're going to
stop
go.
edging.
Yeah,
Um,
they're going to need to stop the other teams from edging all over
Yeah,
them.
no, maybe I'm just scarred from Dylan Radins when he came out a couple years ago at tackle from
Yeah.
FSU, and you're like, I kind of liked him, and then it's like, oh, he's not good at all. But I'm not the biggest. I think I probably would have gone Josh Connerly here, but I think Zabel's definitely got the higher ceiling. I think they probably believe in what they can do.
Hmm.
But they're probably going to still need at that point. They're going to need one of him or Kingsley Suamataia to start at guard, and the other to
Yeah.
start at tackle. I think their O line is they've got some elite players um with Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey, but they've got some serious holes other than that. All right.
Yep.
On to the final pick, Philadelphia.
Mr. Irrelevant.
I don't think they have any needs. I think they can just take the best player on the board. And I
Yep.
think that's Walter Nolan for me.
I agree.
I it's analyzing my draft. I think Walter Nolan is a really talented interior guy. I think after losing Milton Williams, it makes a ton of sense to replace him with a guy who, to be totally honest, I think could go 10, 12 picks before this.
Hmm.
And classic Eagles just getting a guy who played at a high level at a great school for a long time late in the draft, and they're gonna be real happy with it. All right.
Yeah, I completely agree with you as far as the best prospect left on the board. And yeah, I mean they have Jordan Davis, they have um
Jalen
why am
Carter.
I blanking on- Yeah,
Jalen Carter.
obviously they have Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. It's not like they need a defensive lineman, but
They don't really
best
need anything.
might as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our mock draft, guys.
Yep.
You can take a look at it here, but 1.0 mock draft, how we would react if every team did this, they'd be better off. This is what we know.
Yep. And
Um,
this is exactly what's gonna happen too, we hope. We
yep,
hope, we hope.
yep. We
But
may be back for mock draft 2.0. We probably will be back for some sort of draft day reaction. We'll
yeah,
definitely be back here soon to talk NBA playoffs coming up once the bracket is finalized. But yeah, good.
thanks for watching,
Went long, but
everybody.
I thought we did a good job there. All right.
Yeah.
See everybody. I gotta go charge my laptop. Peace.
All right.
How do I end the video?
Recording ended.
Stop recording.